Hey everybody, Aaron Count, Sage Dynamics, and this is the Masterpiece Arms DS9 double stack 1911, 2011, what do you want to call it? Bear down, we're going on an adventure. As you guys who have followed the channel loyally, and I definitely appreciate that, know I've been working my way through double stack 9mm/2011 style guns because I wanted to, and because I'm looking for the one that I like the best, which is completely subjective for the most part, but there are some objective things that we can look at during my standard 2,000 round review process, and we're definitely going to be taking a look at those as we go through this arduous adventure of heartbreak and adversity and perseverance and overcoming difficulties in regards to this particular gun. If you're not familiar with Masterpiece Arms, and some of you may be, some of you may not be, some people are very familiar with their high quality bolt guns. I can attest to that. I've shot them quite a few times, and they are generally very accurate, and the machining work and everything seems to be very, very well, but this isn't about that. And you also may be familiar that they make a Mac 10/Mac 11-ish type pistol in various configurations and calibers, but this is kind of their first foray into the 2011/1911 double stack 1911 handgun market with the DS9 line, which is more tailored, not this one specifically, but the overall line is more tailored for competition type shooting. This one is touted as more of a carry or a duty package. It's got some of the normal features that you would expect from a gun of this size, this caliber, this particular operating system. I've got ambi safeties, I've got a flared magwell, I've got a very aggressive grip texture, carry grip texture. This particular one has a beaver tail safety. I've got a pronounced magazine release and a pronounced slide release. So it's got all the features just getting into it that I would appreciate, and of course it has an optic cut. These days, if a gun can't have a red dot readily put on it, I'm generally not interested in it. Comes with its own iron sight system and a proprietary optic plate, which means I'm going to be dropping it. Now, I ordered this gun last year. This video was filmed in 2022. It's actually almost May. I don't know when you'll be seeing this because this video will go in the queue. Anyway, I ordered it in, I believe, November. It took quite some time to get it, but I did have good communications from Masterpiece Arms, so no big deal there. Sometimes things just take time. There's a delay process. I get it. As long as I have reasonable communication. I'm not one of those guys that emails you on a Sunday night and then emails you 20 minutes later wondering why you didn't respond. Just periodically, I'm like, hey, can I get a ballpark of when I can expect? Because when I ordered it, it said it was in stock, and it wasn't. Anyway, got the gun in. And immediately, without a single round fired, identified some potential issues when I did start shooting it. First things first, the trigger was terrible. Triggers are supposed to go in one direction, and that's back. So when I pull it, opposing force goes the other way. Internal mechanisms does its thing, hammer gets released, bullet goes down range, hopefully exactly where I wanted the bullet to go. But the first trigger, foreshadowing, like that, the first trigger went in 3 directions, well technically 5. It would go back when it wanted to. It would go left and right, and it would move up and down, which is something I don't think I've ever seen on the 2011. I remember some janky, really poorly built 1911s back in the day at gun shows that had triggers that would do that, but I wouldn't expect it for a gun that costs more than my first car. Now, my first car wasn't very expensive, but I liked it. And I expected it to perform and do everything a car was supposed to do. Another thing I noticed in my initial functions check, and I'm showing you now on video, is the safety did something very particular. During a functions check on any gun, if it has a manual safety, something I'm going to do is I'm going to put the safety on, I'm going to pull the trigger repeatedly to see what happens. And then I'm going to sweep the safety with my finger off the trigger. And you know what should happen? The gun shouldn't have the hammer go into a decock position. Now, I will say this, I did try this on the range, and it would not fire a round. I underscore this specifically. When I did it on the range, it would not fire a round when this particular malfunction occurred. Point being, the malfunction shouldn't have occurred. So what did I do? Well, I contacted Masterpiece Arms, and I sent the gun back to them, identified, hey, the trigger's acting weird. One of the things the trigger was doing is sometimes when I'd sweep the safety to shoot around, the trigger would not press. It was almost like the safety was still on, or the safety was more on than the safety was when the safety was on. Because when the safety was on, I'd have a little bit of trigger play, and when I'd sweep the safety off, the trigger would be hard against a wall, like I was pulling against the actual front strap and not the trigger itself. So I needed that fixed, and I needed this strange ambi safety behavior fixed. and I just wanted the gun to be what I thought I was going to get when I paid for it. To Masterpiece Arms credit, sent the gun back, and they did their work. It comes back with a completely different trigger, different grip module. They asked me if I wanted their new grip module. I was like, yeah, sure, go ahead and throw it on there since you got the gun, might as well. And once I got it back, did the functions check again, and was not having any of those issues. So I did get through about 500 rounds having problems with the gun. Gun came back, started the review over again. I felt like that was only fair. And even though life isn't fair, I try to be as fair as possible. So with the initial problems aside, and we'll talk about that later, what am I getting with the DS9 Hybrid that I actually reviewed? If you read the DS9's specs on their website or one of the retailers that sells them, it reads like a wish list of everything you'd want in a 2011. It sounds like it's going to be a race car, a very durable race car. One of the things that applied to me at first is all the parts are machined from bar stock and billet. There's no MIM, no castings, no forgings. I like that a lot. Everything's made and all parts are machined in the USA, most of them right here in Georgia. I appreciate that a lot. They do the frame, the slide, the barrel, the beaver tail, the ambi safety, the slide stop, the firing pin stop, ejector, magwell, and the aluminum grip. Two different textures are available. The actual specs of the pistol, they call it a 9mm wide body double stack 1911. It's a steel lightweight 5-inch frame with a light rail. MPA machined 7075 aluminum grip, black anodized. They're using their slide stop, their ambi safety, like I said, their beaver tail. It's a Koenig hammer, sear, and disconnector, and a custom machined aluminum trigger shoe, and they're quoting a 2-pound trigger pull, which I found to be pretty accurate, at least the second trigger, not the first one. Good slide lightning cuts for forward manipulations if you're into that. Good rear slide serrations for manipulation if you're into that. And it's got the MPA's 5-inch 416R stainless bull barrel with a one-piece stainless steel guide rod. Their sight configuration is cool because they do a fiber front, black rear. Some people are like, oh, I wouldn't want a red fiber on a red dot gun. I don't notice the front sight unless I'm needing it, especially depending on where the red dot zeros versus where the optics are point of aim, point of impact. I may not really see the front sight because I'm target focused when I shoot with the red dot anyway. The lightning cuts here, I got exposed barrel. I don't really care for that. Not that I'm worried like, oh, you get you killed in the streets or anything like that. I just don't care for it. Although I will say that it's a pretty good balance overall with the gun's functionality getting into the first 500 rounds once I get the gun back. Of the weight reciprocation relationship, they didn't take out too much weight. So when the gun cycles, and this is something that happens on some 2011s, or double stack 1911s, what do you call them, as the slide comes back forward, I get a slight little bump at the muzzle, so I just slightly dip below my target, something I may not necessarily notice at the shooter's eye, depending how far I'm shooting or how small I'm trying to hit. But it's definitely something I pick up and notice on video, and it's something that because that's dwell time, that the gun isn't pointed where I want it to point. So I needed to not do that. That's not something that I was really getting to the same degree or noticeably at all that I've gotten from other guns in the past. Optic Mounting is an RMR specific footprint, so I went ahead and used an RMR for the review process. The selector, I'm sorry, not the selector, the safety, the thumb safety works really, really well now that I got it back. It's performing as it should. Trigger weight, like I said, is right there around 2 pounds. Very little take up, very little reset, which I do appreciate, especially because that's one of the most appealing things about this particular design is the performance of the trigger. So I appreciate when the trigger does what it's supposed to do. The framework is, I think, excellent. The pattern, I didn't think it was going to be aggressive enough for me. I like a really aggressive stipple or a really aggressive pattern. And this is kind of like almost like a honeycomb or a micro dot or whatever you want to call it. But it's got just enough edges, just enough surface area there that it does provide a reasonable grip surface, a very friction aided grip surface without being abrasive or painful for long periods of time shooting. So that first 500 rounds, once I got the gun back from getting fixed, just that whole getting to know you phase of shooting it, a lot of one-handed manipulations, because that's just part of my normal review process. And also, I was going to be doing a lot of one-handed personal practice anyway, both primary and support side hand, just because that's a skill that I don't do nearly as much as, well, none of us do nearly as much as we should. So I've been working on getting that skill dialed in even better, no pun intended, at further distances. Sometimes, some guns don't like to be shot one-handed. It's a very simple test you can do with one hand and some bullets. And that's exactly what I did throughout that first 500 rounds. A lot of one-handed shooting, but also a lot of two-handed shooting too. It's 500 rounds worth total, everything, all combined. Then I got to, the burn down. What is the burn down? Well, the burn down, for those of you who aren't familiar, is 500 rounds as quickly as possible to see if that increased rate of fire will identify any issues with the gun that wouldn't occur or you wouldn't notice with the same round count over a much longer period of time. So 4 to 5 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes, versus 3 to 4 hours, days, weeks, months, the normal boilerplate. So here is your 500 round burn down. Pretty happy with the performance. Don't really have any complaints, and that's kind of what we're looking for. The gun functioned, the gun performed, and I was worried that once I got to the burn down, first the 500 rounds didn't have any issues that I noticed I had to set the gun in. So I was worried during the burn down as things heated up, would I start to notice any other issues that weren't identified? Because I got to be honest, I was a little, no pun intended, a little gun shy when I had to send the firearm back for those two very specific fixes. But 500 rounds burned down flawlessly, first to last round. And that brings me into the second half of the review, which is another 1,000 rounds of just shooting the gun and getting a more qualified, objective, and subjective opinion of it. Their flared magwell I like a lot. I'm usually not a magwell guy, but I wouldn't really think of this as a concealed carry gun. Sure, you can conceal carry a 5-inch gun. More about the weight than it is the size for certain people. When it comes to concealability, I conceal carry a full-size gun most of the time. So carrying this would be a little bit more noticeable weight, which I'd get used to eventually, but definitely doable. But I generally stay away from flared magwells because the carry magazine is probably going to be a flush mag to help prevent excess printing, and very hard to get those out of there sometimes depending on the flared magwell in the event of a malfunction like a double feed or something like that. So generally I'm cool with magwells on like duty guns or open carry guns, if you will. Something that's going to be in a retention holster on the hip, exposed to the weather and the elements in the world. But because it's exposed, there's no need for concealment, so having a flared magwell for your extended +5 whatever magazine just makes a lot of sense, and you've got runway grip space to get that mag out of the gun in the event of a malfunction. That being said, I like their magwell a lot, and I ran this a lot from duty holsters. I actually used it the last couple 100 rounds teaching a class. I took it with me because I like to take 2011 sometimes, because be at least a jack of all trades with the most common firearms you're going to encounter. And I do encounter a lot of 2011s in classes these days, so I like to bring at least one with me to run some of the demos in the class from that, and this was no exception. That flared magwell performs as it should. Grip module is good. Like I said, the texture is excellent. Magazine release functions, slide release functions. The trigger is much better than the first trigger I got. And I didn't have any additional safety issues throughout the final 1,000 rounds of that safety selector sticking or behaving strangely or doing anything other than what it is supposed to do. And one thing that us left-handed handgun shooters run into with 1911 and 2011 style guns, sometimes the ambi safety that's added so we can sweep the safety with our left thumb, which the safety would be on the right side of the slide, generally sometimes is an afterthought, so it doesn't have the same degree of specific purchase that you get from a right-handed gun. Definitely not the case with this gun. That ambi safety is ambiing very well. There's no real frills to their optic plate system. I'll go ahead and say that before we talk about drop tests and accuracy. That being said, there doesn't have to be frills. It puts the optic pretty low. One good thing about this style of gun is you can go pretty deep with your cut. They probably could have used a different material or made this plate a little thinner to get that optic to sit a little bit lower, but some people actually like the optic to sit a little higher. So it just depends on what you're into. I generally don't care as much about ride height, but I do want it to sit in the gun versus on top of it. So I chose an RMR because RMR is one of the few optics, but the number is increasing of optics I know that can handle a drop test even when I'm not testing the optic itself. And I was going to be testing the optic plate to see if I could identify any issues that I did a lot of one-hand manipulations using the optic as a ledge to manipulate the gun, which is something we do, or something we might have to do if we have to shoot one-handed and do reloads, clear malfunctions, things like that. So it's just one of those training issues, something you should practice. The drop test is designed to introduce a lot of shock to the gun. I've explained in probably 100 videos at this point why I do the drop test, so I'm not going to get into that again. But first thing I want to show you is the accuracy of the gun, and also confirmation is 0, because after that I'm going to show you, the drops, and we'll see if it maintains 0. I did a drop every 500 rounds. Before I did that, after I got the gun back from being repaired, got it zeroed. I filmed a 5-round confirmation group. I was shooting at 25 yards, shooting 124 grain gold dot. Then, every 500 rounds, I dropped the gun. And here is a 5-round group fired from the same zero distance, 25 yards, shooting 124 grain gold dot. I'm pretty happy with that. I think that we'd call that 0 maintained, which is kind of what I was expecting just looking at the way they designed their plate. At this point, I can generally look at an aftermarket plate system and be like, that's not gonna work, or be like, thumbs up. Same thing with optics. I'm getting the point now, all these new optics coming out, I'm probably gonna test most of them, especially optics that I have a reasonable chance of encountering. That being said, I'm not gonna make a video about everything, because again, this is not my job, it's my hobby. I do enjoy making videos, I enjoy the cinematography of it, but teaching pays the bills, so you're not gonna get a video on everything because I just don't have the time. But I do videos on things that get my interest, or things that I feel like people are gonna ask me enough questions about that I'm just gonna go ahead and knock that out. My final thoughts on this gun. This gun is good. It is. It's a good, reasonable 2011 double stack 1911 9mm. It does everything that particular style of gun is supposed to do. Does it do it better than everything else? It doesn't. Does it do it worse than everything else? It doesn't. It just exists. I think that had I gotten this first, I would probably feel a little bit better about it. It's hard for me to separate the gun that I initially got from the gun that I got back, because they're the same gun. What was done right on this gun should have been done right on the gun that I originally got. Same gun. It just came, it made it through, it slipped through the cracks. And I understand that these things happen, I do. However, it's a firearm. Firearms should not make it out of the factory, out of the shop, with problems like that. Just based on the implication of what these things are for and what we're going to use them for. And I know that can be a somewhat harsh approach, and I would take that approach in regards to any potential failure issue. The manufacturer's got to make it right, which they definitely did, and they did so quickly. So I can't say anything bad about their customer service. Customer service was excellent in regards to that, which it should have been, considering what I was dealing with. And there wasn't a specific safety issue. It didn't cause a negligence charge or anything like that, but it did prevent the gun from functioning the way it should function. And then there's the matter of cost. Look, I expect a $500 gun to work as reliably as a $5,000 gun. However, my degree of expectation is higher with the more money that I spend on a gun. So generally I'm paying that extra amount, and this is where people come into that whole mind concept of that's overpriced. If they can get the same performance for an 1/8 of the price, they're gonna have that's overpriced mentality. People buy guns like this because they want additional performance, not the same degree of performance. I can get a janky trigger for $500. I shouldn't have to pay, $25, $28, $32, $3,500, depending on which particular gun we're talking about. In this regards, talking about the DS9, shouldn't have to pay that much money for a gun that might work. So maybe I just got unlucky. And this is one of the things, like, because of the way I do my reviews, I buy 99% of the stuff I review, and I just buy it. I don't reach out to the company and say, hey, I'm here in Counter for Sage Dynamics, and I'm gonna buy one of your guns. No, I just get on Gunbroker or another website, and I just click add to cart, and I have it shipped because I have my own FFL. And I feel like that keeps my review process more impartial, although I do incur additional cost for it. Some hobbies are expensive. Had I reached out to them, maybe they would have hand-picked a gun and sent it to me. Maybe they would have been like, oh, okay, we don't know who that is, and let's just ship him out a gun, and because he said he was going to pay for it. Or maybe they would have sent me a free gun. There's no such thing. None of that happened. I just bought it, and that's what I got. So that gun potentially could have went to somebody else. And you're probably like, why don't you just shut up about this already? But I think it's important to discuss kind of my thought process in regards to my final opinion of the gun. And that was kind of part of it. This gun is good, but I can't get the other gun out of my mind. And even though they are the same gun, they're not. Because one of them got the attention it should have gotten, the other one didn't. That being said, if you get a gun in the same configuration I did, you're going to be very happy with it. The new one. This thing performs very well, and I think and again, let's put the subjectivity aside and kind of finish this out. It's a good gun. Is it worth what they're charging? That's up to you. I think that if it performs as well as this gun does, especially long term, yeah, I think their price point's about right for what you're getting. This one just left a bad taste in my mouth. But if you're interested in the DS9, it's good. If there's anything wrong with it, they'll fix it. I'm Eric Count with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.